I should not have said that. I should not have said that.
Yeah, we can put an edit point if you ever drop any information that you should not have dropped. We
That
can.
was a pretty good Hagrid.
Welcome to Pods Unchained, the podcast where we talk about all things Gods Unchained, blockchain, NFT, immutable, but mostly Gods Unchained. Joining me as always is my co-host, CautionFun. Caution, how are you doing today?
I'm doing all right, Copper. How are you?
I'm doing decent. You sound a little bit bummed. What's going on, Caution? What's troubling you?
Just
Having trouble finding
disappointed.
balance?
That's a great way to put it. Yeah, my mental balance is off.
Of course, we're referring to the new balance patch, which just went live. It's very divisive, I would say. And so we're actually going to do a whole extra podcast later this week where we talk about all the ins and outs of the balance patch. But we didn't want to overshadow the incredible opportunity we had to sit down with the game director, Chris Clay, this week. So without further ado, let's dive into that interview, and then we'll see you guys later this week for balance patch notes. Welcome, Chris Clay, to the podcast. If you don't know who Chris Clay was, he is the former game director of Magic the Gathering Arena. He is the game director now of Gods Unchained. He apparently also worked on Lotro, Lord of the Rings Online. I saw that
Oh, man.
while digging through
Yes.
the LinkedIn there. And I've got to say, I've played heavily all of those games, so it's pretty wild to be talking to you. Welcome
happy
to
to
the
be here.
podcast.
And man, I've got so many stories from Lotro's development. I think horse pants will forever scar me.
Oh, man. Stories for another time, I think.
Yeah, for another time.
But so yeah, since you are the game director now of Gods Unchained, and you were the game director of Magic Arena, what exactly is your day-to-day in Gods Unchained, and like how is that different from when you worked for Magic?
Yeah, I mean, they're both card games, so they've got that in common going for them. A major difference being that, with Magic Arena, the card set development was all handled by, Magic R&D. So we were mostly just focused on, implementing the cards, and we had, an absolutely massive backlog of them to sort of work our way back through. And with Gods Unchained, the team is handling the whole process from card creation, through to sort of digital implementation. Also just massively different being in a mega corporation like Hasbro and Wizards versus being part of a startup. Just altogether different challenges. One of the things with working at Wizards on Magic Arena is a lot less hat wearing. Typically people have a role and they're filling that role. Working on Gods Unchained, myself and many other people on the team included, we're often filling multiple roles on the project, and at any given time we're handling different bits. A lot more creative freedom on the Gods Unchained side of things, and also far more unknown. Working on Magic Arena, we're essentially creating a free-to-play game. That space has been refined and explored over and over for decades now. And with Gods Unchained, we really are on the edge of technology, and it's been fascinating in that the rules of the game, in the crypto space from when I joined versus today have changed so much that in some ways that advantage of experience isn't as deep because the rules of the game just keep changing. But yeah, enjoyed them both, but very different experiences.
What is it fair to ask? Like, what was the size of like the teams at like Magic versus the size of the team with Gods Unchained?
Yeah, I mean, working at Hasbro, we had a fairly a fairly sizable team working on the project, and also very different in that, or I should say, there's a similarity in that both Magic Arena and Gods Unchained were projects that had already started when I joined them. The difference, with Magic Arena is, some of the parts of the game had been in development for many years before I got there, and it created a challenge all its own of trying to shift the momentum of the path that things were on and sort of take it in the direction that I believed it needed to go, and obviously had a lot of help in getting there, and a whole lot of people to sort of make it happen on the timelines we were on. With Gods Unchained, being part of an independent startup, we're having to do more with less, but also different in that it's not a team of people that have necessarily been together for a long time and sort of have ingrained expectations. So, we've been able to sort of get together and get behind where we're going more efficiently than I think we were able to sort of change the direction of the team, at Wizards.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Did that answer the question, or was that a little too nebulous?
No, yeah, it did for sure.
I thought it was a wonderful answer. And yeah, on the note of having expectations, whether you were already there or going in, did you have like a mental timeline, like a projection for how long it would take Gods Unchained to reach, whatever barometer of mainstream success, where you'd consider it that, when you first arrived there? And has it changed at all since you've arrived?
Yeah, and I did, and it certainly has changed in no small part because the rules changed. When I joined the team back in 2019, I mean, the Ethereum network was in a massively different place. There wasn't any DeFi yet. The price of gas was just a bare fraction of where we're at today. And the core assumption at the time was that we were going to be able to leverage the Ethereum blockchain to do everything that we wanted to do. And I think everyone can clearly see that that is not the case today. It's part of the reason why we've created Immutable X. It's part of the reason we're moving to L2. And that has changed the timelines considerably from my initial estimates. I can say when I had the conversation with my family, trying to move people across the globe, that essentially we started off where it's like, hey, we're going to have a 3 to 4 year adventure in Australia, and I was pretty sure that in that timeline, I could take the game to where I wanted it to be. Things have changed a little bit since then. Instead of it being, a potentially 3 to 4 year adventure, since then we got permanent residency here, and starting to settle in a little bit more for the long haul, because as the rules change, we're having to adapt things. So yeah, that initial sort of timeline has shifted a bit, and some of it will be how this year goes. We've already made some good progress with the launch of Trial of the Gods on Immutable X. There's certainly been some challenges along the way there, but also some huge successes just in the volume of trading we're seeing in the sub $1 card space, something that would never happen on mainnet. So some things have been sort of proved and validated. I think the other thing that has given me a lot of confidence in where we're going is just where we were in the beginning of the year, as we launched Stay Played Get Paid, and we really tested out some of our core theories around what we can do to scale the game. And I've talked about this before, but one of the things that we're looking to do is scale less based off of advertising, little promoted posts on Reddit or on Facebook where it's some crazy video encouraging you to play whatever game now, but rather doing things more through Stay Played Get Paid, where we're having our community help us organically grow and returning that sort of marketing spend into the community and into the game itself, rather than having it sort of bleed out into the ether. And it's something that Stay Play Get Paid really validated. We spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on that campaign, but most of that went to our players, and that just sort of fed into itself in a very positive way for both the game and the community, I felt.
Yeah, I loved Stay Play
right.
Get Paid. Big fan of
Yeah,
it.
it's such a cool trend. Like, being seeing the between the Stay Play Get Paid and the play to earn model within the game itself, just returning value to the players and the community. And they probably return some of the value right back to you in turn. So that's just awesome to witness.
In theory, it was going to be a very sort of noble loop, and in practice, it showed to be true. Right now, things are cooled down as we, in many ways, take a step back and you go to rebuild some of those systems to make them more sustainable. I think anybody who participated, saw some of the challenges we had just with the scalability of the program. So now it's a chance to do more of it with automated systems and having less human interaction. That sort of human cost, some of our existing systems, continues to be one of the key challenges that we need to address, and this is across things like Ranked Weekend and even like the Stay Played Get Paid payouts. And as we can get those costs off of sort of like the human side of things, and have systems handling that, it opens us up to scale in a way that we couldn't if we keep them at basically being human driven.
Yeah.
Or as we like to say in the business, having neat macros do it.
That's fair. Yeah, I mean, there definitely obviously was a huge pivot, I'm sure, in manpower and resources when gas skyrocketed to just all-time highs. That, I mean, we thought gas was like, we used to call it, quote unquote expensive when it hit like 8 gwei.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, now that's just laughable to think that was the height of.
Yeah, I would love to be back in the heady days of 8 gwei when we're turning off fusing for a moment before it goes back down.
Yes. I mean, fusing was on, I think, back in February of 2020, and I was able to fuse a handful of cards during that time, and it was such a great system, and I'm sure that people have been just dying for it to come back. But I mean, obviously, again, with the blockchain aspects, that definitely, I'm sure, put a kink in the timeline. But apart from blockchain, is there something that players take for granted that's like actually really hard to implement? Is there like any other systems or challenges that you guys are facing that's not basically caused from gas? Or is it?
It's something that you guys encounter every time you play the game, and something that comes across every ranked weekend. And it's the complexity of actually making a card game function when you've got thousands of cards, and you're correctly maintaining state across a server and 2 clients, with the absolutely massive possibility space of interactions between those roughly 1,000 cards. It's something that if we're doing it right, you do take for granted, because when you play the game, things work as expected. And it's interesting to me in a way in that I think it's more taken for granted now, because most of the time things are working. So when they don't, it feels even more wrong. You go back in time, even a year, and our failure rates on games and issues with cards were actually much higher than they are today. But as specific cards break today, they stand out more in some ways. It's more of a frustrating case because all of these other cases are working.
Right.
But it's really challenging, and it's one of the things that apart from all of the work that needs to go into the blockchain side of the game, just looking at the core game itself, we've been taking some steps back, looking at the big picture and looking at ways that we can improve how our system works there to provide better stability across the board. But yeah, it's rough.
Yeah, I mean, definitely bugs have obviously been an issue. Is that I know that like Immutable has been hiring more. Is that something that's like, is there a focus to try and hire people to fix bugs? Is there ever going to be some type of like, let's just rebuild the system from the ground up type initiative? Or is it, you know, the more people we hire to focus on bugs, we can squash them all? Or what's the plan, I guess?
Yeah, so it is interesting in that in some ways, the focus this year has been less just on fixing bugs and more on the systems to sort of help us prevent them. So one of the things that has really been helping on that front is we've been setting up a suite of what we call eye tests, so that anytime code changes are made to the game, essentially we run through the suite of eye tests, and that tells us automatically if any number of functions, be they afterlife or roar, have encountered an issue based on the changes that are made. So in the old world, back in 2020, if a change broke, essentially what we had to do is you're merging that change in, things are getting built, it's getting sent over to QA, and you've got to hope that QA tests that particular interaction to make sure that it doesn't break. Whereas today, as soon as the engineer has run the build, the eye tests run, and they can see up front that, yep, they've got an issue with something. So it lets us catch things much earlier in the process. And that has certainly had an impact. It means that when we do have bugs now, they're usually more specific, and we can ideally address them and sort of resolve them moving forward by ideally creating eye tests to ensure that the bugs we have fixed doesn't ever revert or happen again. Like there's been a lot of focus recently, for instance, on like pick one and delve cards, and we're not quite all the way across it yet, but a lot of the work there is to try to permanently address those systems.
Gotcha.
And yeah, the team itself is certainly expanding. We've got a number of roles up on the Immutable Careers website. Please refer people through and or apply. Definitely looking to get some great new additions into the team.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of just like disconnects or server type issues, I've seen some people suggest like most games. In fact, I don't know if there's any game that I can even think of that has only like one server or one set of servers, like not on separate continents or divided by regions. Is that something that causes any issues? Is that something that ever would be implemented to split out regions?
I would say potentially. I don't think we're at the point today where it would make a ton of sense to have an NA server and a European server, but potentially one of the advantages of having a turn-based game where each player is sort of taking their turns and then passing them over is we're not as sort of latency dependent as if we were a first-person shooter, for instance. So in some ways we can get away with having centralized servers and not see the problems you definitely would. Though there are little places where this manifests. A key one right now is like the turn change indicator. When you go and click that, it basically is sending a message off to the server, and when it returns back, it'll flip over to your opponent's turn. Depending on where you are in the world, that can either be relatively responsive or feel super unresponsive. It's one of those things that continues to annoy me because it should respond immediately to your click, even client side, to let you know that it's interacted correctly. But I wouldn't say that latency doesn't ever cause us issues. It's certainly been a part of more than a handful of bugs, but not a critical concern overall.
Okay.
One more question on the note of expanding the team in that vein there. I wanted to ask you, if you were gifted resources to allocate towards the game's development, where would you put them? How would you prioritize them? Would it be balance, client development, game development? Which area there would you put most of them towards?
Yeah, so there are two areas where we're essentially doing that right now. One is on the game design side of things. Across sort of like we've got an open role for a monetization designer. We're looking to bring in another sort of senior TCG designer. So like bolstering some of the design so that we can get to where I want to be with a very consistent cadence of sort of set development. We're still a little bit longer there than I would like. But the big one is on, what I'll call like the full stack side of development across, the launcher and our backend. Most of the resources would go there, in no small part due to having to rebuild so much to basically work, with L2. It's not that it's a ground up effort necessarily, but it does sort of change the the rules of engagement and some of the systems just don't have the same pathways as they did before, and it's a place where I think we've fallen the furthest behind. I certainly think that the core gameplay itself can continue to improve. It's something we're going to keep working on, but the place where I want to drive us forward the most is on our meta systems, and it's been a place where we've had to make some really difficult choices. It's things like sealed deck. People have played that on the PTR. We know what the changes are that we want to make. Those changes require back end effort, and right now we've got our back end effort going into key parts of the immutable X transition. So it's painful when you've got something that is potentially just a few weeks worth of work away from being ready, but it's got to take a backseat to the others, and getting additional people to be able to sort of flex on that side would be great. And some of it too is other areas where I know the community and myself are aligned on that. We'd like to see improvement along the lines of like matchmaking. The work needed to sort of take that across the line to the next level isn't great, but it's a system that it works. Does it work great? But it works. And we've got systems right now that don't work, so they're needed, so they're getting the attention.
Gotcha. I mean, this might be a dumb question, but can't we tighten up matchmaking? Like, someone brought up the point that, like, someone, for instance, Mirage 88 facing off against a rank 8 during weekend ranked seems a little bit unfair, to say the least. I mean, anyone facing Mirage 88 is unfair.
It's a little bit unfair, yeah.
But can't we tighten it from 12 to 8? Isn't there a simple, quote unquote, simple fix? I'm sure there's more things behind the scenes that go on, but make it like 12 to 9 or 12 to 10.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that we can do, but it's never quite so simple as it looks at face value. In that, are most of the games that Mirage playing against somebody rank 8? I would expect not. I'd have to go look at the logs. But there's always going to be outlier cases like that too. In that, if he is playing against an 8, a few things have happened. I will say that one of the squads that we've got working this quarter is our live ops squad, and one of the things that they are looking at is basically the whole sequence from when you click that launch game button through to the launch of the game itself. And this includes how things are going with our master server and matchmaking. So we're potentially not too far away from seeing some changes there.
Okay.
The flip side of it, though, is if we just say, like, if we go all the way to like one rank difference is what we allow, we have a flip side problem there of, as people are waiting for their match, so to speak, this is this is one of the areas where I've got a fair amount of data from my past experience that, particularly for card games, there's sort of this magic boundary after about 20 seconds in queue where people just start dropping. And it definitely, after a minute, like it's just right off the table. If people haven't matched in a minute, they pop out and potentially never requeue. And it's been one of the concerns that we've had with some of the issues we've had with people, launching and not properly being placed in the queue. So they're sitting there for 10 minutes because, man, that's terrible.
Right.
But there is this spectrum of balance between getting people into matches quickly and getting high quality matches.
Right.
The work that we are doing on matchmaking should take us towards higher quality matches without sacrificing time in queue. But that work still has to make out to you guys. So hopefully soon.
Fair enough. All right, we're gonna talk. We got some questions about cards coming up. So we'll start off with an easy question for cards. We just want you to know what are your 3 favorite cards. Could be from any set.
Yeah, so these are potentially going to be a little bit boring because, like, I'm not like my 3 favorite cards at the moment, at least. I really love Vault Vagabond. I love the Vault Vagabond because it's a card that once you get it going, you get to beat down your opponent with their own deck, and it gives you a lot of information about what they're going to be doing. And that sort of combination of just elements allows you to put your opponent on tilt in many cases. Because you know what they're going to be drawing. It sets you up to play your cards right, and in many ways perfectly counter what they're doing, and that can really easily put people on tilt. And once people are on tilt, in many cases you've already won the game. The other one is sort of a pairing of 2 cards that I like a lot at the moment. So I do love the Olympian Guard. Very basic card, but it just scales nicely if you can keep it alive. And to that extent, I like Isadora Daring Patrician because she brings out a whole bunch of Olympian cards. And there's a consistency to that I've been enjoying as I've been playing Light.
Someone hypothesized that your favorite god was Light. I think that was CautionFun.
Might have been.
Is your favorite god Light?
No, Ludia is my favorite god.
Okay.
But I've been playing a lot of Light lately because it's one of the gods that I want to understand more. And it's of the gods I've played, for the longest time, it was one of the gods I've played least. So
interesting.
It's been a place I've been putting a lot of effort, not because it's my favorite necessarily, but because it's a place where I didn't feel I had the depth of understanding of the gameplay that I wanted. And some of it that's come out of that is, there are some cards in there I quite like.
That's awesome to hear. I was not expecting Isadora, I'll tell you that much, but I'm happy to hear it considering I have a gold one. The gold Light cards, so nice. But on that, I guess a note of game development there, going forward. Have you considered adding any sort of cards or effects into the game that can interact with the opponent's turn, kind of like secrets from Hearthstone or trap cards from Yu-Gi-Oh?
Yeah, I can say that it's definitely been an area that we've discussed on multiple occasions. Particularly when we're seeing interactions that, man, you just would love to have your opponent sort of questioning whether they should do it or not. Whereas right now they're doing it with full confidence. I would say that going so far as to changing the rules of the game so you could actively play a card during your opponent's turn wouldn't happen. But having more either cards on board, in hand, or relics that have your opponent question their actions during their turn because they're not quite sure what the result would be depending on what you've got out. I think it's an area that would add some good possibility space into the matrix. We just need to do it right. So yeah, something that coming down the line in the future, I could absolutely see us doing.
Interesting. So when you say relics, are you implying that a relic would have a hidden functionality?
I think it's totally possible.
Interesting. I like it.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I was thinking of like Vine Armor, where like, when an opponent's creature attacks your god there, they take 2 damage. But if there was some mystery behind the effect they might encounter, that would just add a whole nother layer to it. That's exciting.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking of weird cards, here's something that I have ranted about a lot, and I have to ask because I need to know, what is the deal with god spells? Are you even aware of what they are? Because a lot of people don't even know that they exist, and they're very confused when they encounter them.
Yeah, so I can't actually remember more than like a handful of times where I've played against them. And I certainly haven't played them much. This is something that I asked Meals about. I'm like, what's the deal with this question on God's Spells? Like, what are they actually asking? Based off of some of what she was talking about, it seems more like I'm gonna have to have my people talk to your people, because I think.
I mean, effectively, there's just six spells in the game that randomly are able to cut through ward.
Well, yeah, and that's the place that like I wasn't actually aware that they were cutting through ward, and that's actually a place that's concerning to me because it's is that actually the design intent? I kind of expect not, but again, I need to talk with the cards team, and I didn't have time to this morning on this. Yeah,
it's something that I see a lot of new players question me and say, like, what the heck just happened? Like, how this person played a spell, it went right through my ward. I thought I was protected, ready to go, and then it shocks you to the core.
Yeah, it does seem that something is potentially not quite right there, and with Genesis potentially being more available to people pretty quickly here, that could become much more of a problem in the not too distant future. So.
For sure.
I guess let's leave that one as we'll investigate.
You'll just have to come back on again and let us know when you find
clearly that's the solution.
There you go. Okay, so our producer wanted us to ask this question, and it's a silly question. One which brace yourself. But I think it does lead to some interesting points. He made us swear that we would ask it, though. So this one's for you, Soul One. Any plans on customizing the god profile pictures during the match? It's one of the main ways that players identify with their god. I will say that Caution said, quote, I'd be fine if it was just a white box with the word God in this. So not all of us think that we need to be able to customize gods, but it did bring up something else that I had considered, which was maybe load screens could be NFTs. The gods themselves could be NFTs. I think there's a lot of things that could be monetized. Are there any other? I mean, emotes, I think, was something that was talked about a long time ago. Are there any plans to, maybe tokenize other things like god art or load screens, emotes?
So yeah, this is an interesting one. Like, from your profile, which right now is essentially just your rarest Genesis card. I'm pretty sure, which we don't have control over. To your loading screen, to I haven't actually heard the request before for customizing the look of the god itself, but that's absolutely an area we could explore, and we have definitely done some work on our end on where we would like to sort of take the emote system, because that is a place where you can potentially bring a lot of personality to yourself in the game that we're kind of missing right now. Yeah, the one thing about emotes that's always painful is like the second we add them in, somebody's going to abuse them to be a jerk.
Yep.
But yeah, this sort of extends to a couple of places. One of the key hires we're looking to make is for an art director, and getting that person in and fully up to speed is what will unlock the next level of some of this customization. I've got a pretty complex past, as a developer. I've been a technical artist, I've been an art director, been a game designer, and obviously been a game director. But right now, as we're looking for an art director, holding on one too many hats in general. And once I can hand off that hat, it opens up more possibility space here too. Yeah, some of it for these is, they are blocked behind just existing elements of the roadmap that we need to develop before we really move on to some of these other places. But certainly some interesting possibility space there.
I guess that
I'm glad to hear that. I like the idea of prioritizing utility over aesthetics for sure. But on that note of the aesthetics there, are there any plans to, I guess, add additional effects to maybe like higher tier shiny cards? When that new art director comes in, will we see alternative arts,
parallax,
or expanding on the current art? Parallax, one of Copper's favorite words.
I love parallax.
Anything you can speak on there?
Oh man, I painted many of the original parallax cards on MTGA.
Wow.
No kidding.
Yeah, I got it down. It took me about 10 to 15 minutes to do one. By the time I was done, and to get the first set out, it was just like, all right, for the next 14 hours straight, painting depth maps. Would it be parallax? I'm not sure. It's certainly one of the easier ones to implement in general. It is something that I've talked to some people on the team about. Some of it for me is a question of where we're doing it. So, the Genesis cards, for instance, are locked. Just how locked are they in terms of visual representations? Would it be just future sets? I could see us, as we sort of, further down the line, leave season 1 behind and go into season 2. Having season 2 have, just different looking sort of card templates, or card frames, I should say. There's definitely possibility space in the visuals for the cards for adding additional levels of VFX into the card art, adding motion, things like that. Certainly not front and center. And much like the previous question, it's getting the art director in and giving them some time to explore the space a little bit more. I wouldn't want to just be like, yep, we know that parallax works, done that before, let's move forward.
That's a good point.
But yeah, as Caution said, the cosmetic side is right now prioritized below the utility functions. So still trying to bring a lot of the utility online.
Yeah.
But one of the great things about this though is in the NFT space, there's so much room for customization.
Oh yeah.
And meaningful customization.
Absolutely. Speaking of the non-aesthetic side of things, the fusing, for instance, is something that we've all been waiting for a really long time.
A long time.
A long time. So obviously that hopefully would take priority, and so good to hear that it is. What about once stage 6 happens, the IMX rollout, right? That's just going to be core fusing. When do you think is Genesis and higher shines of Genesis, or even higher shines of core, is that all going to kind of roll out at that same time, or is there an expected release roadmap for fusing itself?
So yeah, the the thing I would say there is, stage 6 isn't the end of the sort of IMX rollout.
Mm-hmm.
As we get closer there, we need to extend out that roadmap and let people know where things are going. I do expect that the fusing of core fusing is just getting things sort of to meteorite, but like the ability to fuse core or welcome set or genesis or trials cards up to higher shines is in many ways it's something I expected to have over a year ago, pretty soon after we had gotten core fusing together, and then the blockchain itself certainly didn't agree with that. I expect that it's one of those stages that's going to follow core fusing pretty closely, but it isn't the same problem. So one of the reasons that it is separated out is, for core fusing, we're taking off-chain cards and creating an on-chain card,
Right.
much like getting trials onto IMX. That's relatively easy at this point. It's just minting a new token. For fusing up to higher shines,
right, you have to burn NFTs.
And that's not something that we have that unless I'm unaware, and that's totally possible. Like, we don't actually have that at L2 at the moment. So there's a little bit of dependency chaining there. In theory, we could just send all of the fused cards to a burn account in the meantime, but there are some unknowns there. But I do expect that getting the shine fusing, particularly because the cost of doing so won't be what it would have been on mainnet, will follow end stage pretty closely after core fusing. But it's still far enough out that I can't say with high certainty exactly when that'll be. But you can expect that as we get closer to that stage 6, that we'll update the blog with information on the stages that are sort of going to be coming out beyond that. And there are definitely stages that are more exciting even than fusing to higher shines coming after stage 6.
Interesting.
Vague excitement.
Care to elaborate?
Oh, I care to, but I won't.
Fair enough. So there's been a lot of talk about users who like to hide their names during the weekend ranked, and some people don't like to hide their names. Some people think it gives an unfair advantage if one person is and one person isn't. Do you think that there should be some type of system where it either just automatically shows both players' player IDs so no one can hide, just not show anyone's name at all until the match is over? Do you think this is an issue? Do you think it's something that looking people up is giving people unfair advantages?
So I think you can say with some certainty that being able to look up your opponent and see their deck from recent past games is an advantage. If you can do so, it gives you information that is going to increase your odds of winning. How much that increases, I couldn't say with certainty. It's hard to calculate. But being able to know what's in your opponent's deck is an advantage. Full stop.
Yep.
And I definitely hear the player concerns on this front. We have talked about in the past potentially putting in some time delays on our API, for instance. So that doesn't necessarily completely solve the problem. If you primarily play one deck, even if it's a day-long delay, if you're always playing the same deck, they're still going to be able to go back in time and find you. I don't think the solution is to stop sharing the API information. I think a time delay on the API potentially adds a level of uncertainty, which reduces the advantage, but I'm not sure that that's actually the solve. It is an interesting possibility space to basically hide the username through to the end of the match. I do think, though, that full anonymity is a problem in and of itself, in that it makes it much easier for people to sort of abuse systems and get away with it. It's kind of hard to report your opponent for
True.
anything if you just don't know who they are. This is one I'm going to have to take away and you'll look at a little bit more deeply. Like I've been perfectly okay with people sort of using like the 4-box approach to hide their name. It's not something that we're like, hey, you can't do that.
Right.
It's sort of a valid workaround to kind of get this in the current system. There's certainly some interesting space here to explore, though, on how we could still get still allow players to keep their actual usernames, but hide them from your opponent until it no longer matters, so to speak.
Yeah. That's fair.
I'll think on that one.
Yeah, kind of in the same vein of user IDs, is there any word on, for instance, like team tags? Like, that's a very separate issue, but something with usernames is that a lot of TST, for example, would love to be able to drop
or Badger or Eagle.
There you go.
It's something that is sort of in the backlog as a possibility, but it hasn't sort of risen up to the point where it'd be implemented anytime soon. But on the whole, fully in support of even to get beyond just tags, allowing players to, whatever you would want to call them, form guilds or larger sort of collectives of players working together. That's been something that we've discussed a few times on where we would like to take things eventually. So it isn't just you always on your own, but potentially working towards some larger goals across the server or across your guild equivalent.
Very cool.
Definitely some interesting space there that could be explored.
Yeah. All right, so we've reached the obligatory world tournament question.
Oh, God.
So you mentioned last year that the world tournament might happen in Q2 or Q3 of 2021. I assume that a lot has changed with that timeline. Maybe it needs to be pushed. Do you think it needs to be pushed by more than a year, for instance? And by the way, can CautionFun and I cast it when it happens?
Please.
Please.
But the world tournament is one of those things that is both, stupidly exciting because we've still got this big pool of money ready to deploy for it.
Yeah.
And it's been one of those things that I've talked about wanting to use as a really key moment in GU's growth to bring excitement and attention to it.
Yeah.
And this is something that if you talk to me again a year ago, if you talked to me to like January of 2020, I don't think I would have believed that we wouldn't have run it by this point. But there were just some things that I think have to happen before we do, and one of those is just Genesis has to be
accessible,
something that is accessible, and we're obviously not there yet. I don't think we're necessarily too far away, but that's got to happen. And I wasn't expecting to actually. I would say like back on that time frame, L2 was sort of a twinkle in our eye. It was something that we're like, hey, we might actually have to go down this path, and research was starting on it. And I had more expectation that we were going to deploy our resources to non sort of foundational aspects of the game,
right.
Just to sort of make some of the utility to the utility work. And we've had to dedicate resources away from things that get us closer to the world tournament. I can say with confidence that it's not happening in Q2. The absolute earliest it would happen would be the end of Q3, and a whole lot of things have to go right for that to be a possibility.
Yeah.
I think, as you sort of hit Q4, possibility certainly goes up. But this could happen next year. I think that's also very plausible. Do I think by more than a year? I don't know if my blood pressure could take that. This is one of those. Yeah, it's definitely not an albatross because again, it's this huge opportunity for the game.
Yeah.
Particularly just breaking into mainstream. Like this is a level of tournament that we can go out to many of the big esports teams and get real interest in sending people over to participate. In addition to the people that we've got who, I think are likely to be better just because of their experience with the game.
Right.
But yeah, huge recruitment opportunity. But we're just not ready yet, which is unfortunate. But it's where we're at.
That's fair.
No, yeah, so completely understandable. And on the note of things that I guess would be further enabled by layer 2 solutions, and also might help with getting those Genesis cards into the hands of more people, making them more accessible. The idea of lending pools or renting out cards, that's something we've talked about on the pod a few times. Is that something that you guys have considered? Is that something that you guys have like concrete ideas of how you'd like to implement it? And what are your thoughts on that subject?
Yeah, this is one of those where I would love somebody to build it. I don't know when we would get to it on our timeline, but part of the advantage of Immutable X, being API driven and being open is, this is something that somebody else could potentially move forward with. I do think we need to get a little bit more functionality into L2, but in theory, if we're at the stage where you can deploy smart contracts on L2, this becomes a real possibility, and it's a really cool space for me in that it's something that in the physical world is doable, but it's actually quite complex because custody is so much harder in the real world. But when it's backed by a smart contract, being able to lend out cards or being able to rent cards, so that potentially anybody can drop in, grab a deck and go compete, even if they don't actually own the cards. I think there's a real opportunity there. I think if it ends up being that Immutable has to build it ourselves, I think it's still a ways out on the roadmap.
All right, we are almost out of time, but we have time for a rapid fire round of questions here. But before we do that, we have to ask you, give us something exclusive. A card from the new set. Yeah, less of a question. It's definitely just a straight up demand.
Yeah. Well, it would be divine if I could share something with you. Yeah, it's something I've been ordered to not do. The amount of body armor I would need the next time I go into the office to avoid certain death. I don't know if you've seen Meals Angry, but marketing isn't ready yet to start teasing the next set.
I mean, you've been teasing it on Twitter a little bit with the art and stuff.
A little bit.
Maybe a little bit of backstory about the dog. What's up with that dog? He's very cute.
It's super cute.
Is it a he or a she? What's its name?
I have no idea. Why do you ask these hard, deep questions? Let's get it back to World Tournament. That's so much easier than what's the dog's name?
This is our gotcha section.
Yeah,
this is clearly the gotcha section.
Is the dog an Olympian? He kind of looks like an Olympian.
Yeah, no.
That's fair. That's fair.
I guess the thing I can say with a little bit more, that's teasing, without saying too much, is. Great. Now my brain is like, no, don't say that. No, you can't say that either.
Do it. Do it.
Yeah, it's one of the things I'm excited about for the next set is I think it does a really good job of expanding out the possibility space of the game without you're doing what you see so many times with card sets of it's just like it becomes the new answer. Like the power of the card set is just so high that you have to go and get it in order to compete. I think the balance of the card set, as we've gone through it in playtesting, it adds on to the existing foundation we have of core and trials and welcome and genesis, and enhances it without obviating previous elements of it. So like the potential, the potential metas that come out of this, like I can't predict exactly what they will be, but I know that they're going to be different. And I wish we're at the point where we were just about ready to launch it, and we've got some more work on L2 before that's going to be the case, but we're getting closer.
Gotcha. All right.
Let's hit the rapid fire.
It's rapid fire time. You get one or a couple words max to answer each question, and you got to answer as quick as possible. Here we go. We'll start with an easy one. Favorite Gods Unchained podcast?
Gods Unchained.
Least favorite god?
Least favorite god? Ooh.
This is supposed to be rapid fire.
I don't have a least favorite god. We'll go with war.
A keyword from the new set?
Denied.
Can you give meals a raise?
It is the right time of year for it.
Which is next, sealed mode or the next set? Which one's coming first?
Oof. Likely next set.
What character from the game are you going to cosplay as for this coming mythic draw?
Mythical Clay.
That's not a good answer. I'm voting for the dog. Any plans for GU physical merch, hats, sweaters, lore books, art books?
No concrete plans right now, but I know I want some merch myself, so I would put this in the highly plausible category.
And last but not least, the obligatory IMX token. Is this a thing? Should we hold our breaths?
I think waiting with bated breath would be better than holding it.
Okay, fair enough.
Advice.
Excellent advice. Well, we know you're an extremely busy individual, so thank you so much for spending an hour with Caution and myself. A lot of enlightening things, so thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, a little bit of enlightening, a little bit of evasion where I had to evade, but thank you guys both for hosting. It was a pleasure to have a chat with you both, and hopefully we'll get to do this again in the future.
Absolutely. All right, thanks.
Looking forward to it. Thank you, Chris.
Yep, have a good one, guys. Yep.
All right, you too. Bye. Well, thanks for listening to our interview with Chris Clay. That was quite an awesome experience. We did talk to him after the fact for just a few minutes, and if you guys have any more questions in the future, we might be able to get him back in again. But I found that to be very enlightening. How did you feel about that?
Yeah, no, I'm just immensely thankful for the opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. What is that noise I hear, Caution? Is that Lil Link?
I hope so.
Oh, I love it. Well, we'll see you guys in just a few more days for a balance patch special edition of Gods Unchained. But until then, take it easy.
Things are so bright for you. I hope that it's healing you. You bring so much fortitude. I'm so excited for you. Things are so bright for you. I hope that it's healing you. You bring so much fortitude. I'm so excited for you.